Kuldaris Rift.
Something like that.
It's tough to pronounce. I'm going to call it Rift for now, but it looks like we've got Tails as our orange Protoss player in the bottom right-hand spawn. And in the top left-hand corner, we have his opponent, our blue Protoss player, Saladin.
Alright, so we've got a Protoss versus Protoss here. And once again, you know, I want to be able to describe this game also for the player, or for the people who may be in the IGN building who are tuning in that may not be too familiar with StarCraft 2. Once again, it's a game of 3 races: Protoss, Terran, and Zerg. In the last series, we saw a matchup between 2 of the 3 races, which is Terran and Zerg. This time, we're going to see a mirror matchup between 2 Protoss players.
So rightfully, that they haven't seen Protoss yet, so now both players are Protoss.
Yeah, you can't never get enough of Protoss. You're going to get a double dose of them. So Saladin will be the blue Protoss at the top left. coL.MVPTails, the more well-known, the player who, if you had a betting spread on, you'd probably put all your money down on Tails right here. But you never want to discount anybody in StarCraft 2. You always have a chance. So we'll have to see what happens here, but it is a mirror matchup. And a mirror matchup brings with it different strategies than a conventional matchup does, because you're essentially facing your own race. And a lot of times that forces you to play a different style. In terms of Protoss versus Protoss, things get pretty aggressive pretty quickly.
Yeah, and in Protoss versus Protoss, generally you do see a lot of one-base play.
Yeah.
And a lot of times games will end before the 20-minute mark, just because Protoss early aggression strategies are particularly hard for Protoss to stop. So, and it's particularly hard for any race to stop, but Protoss just doesn't have the tools to stop themselves, if you will. So a lot of times we will see Protoss players utilize 4 gates, 3 gate,
the best defense is a perfect offense.
Sure, something like that, absolutely. And it's a very micro-intensive matchup, so a lot of times players that have really good micro, or you know, just players that are pretty sneaky, and we've seen a lot of PvP from Tails. He's a guy that really likes to sneak a Dark Shrine in there, loves to use 3-gate Blink Stalker, things like that, builds that can catch his opponent off guard and just do a ton of damage. And that's really what PvP can be about sometimes. You will see a lot of coin flips in the PvP matchup, and when we say coin flip, it's basically anytime both players choose a specific build order right off the bat, and sometimes the way things match up, the matchup just ends up ending due to, you know, heads versus tails build order, or A versus B build order, and the way they match up, A happens to win in this situation. And if it goes a different way, then, you know, B happens to win in that situation. And it's really not due to skill or one player being better than the other. It's just, although there is something to be said for using the right build order.
Yeah.
Some players are very good at choosing the right build order, and they end up winning a lot of the time in the coin flip situations. So
yeah. Well, let's take a look at this map, man. This is a Kuldaris Rift, and this, even more so than Sandshore and Mist, really features the high elevation to low ground elevation of the map. If we have the main here, and then the natural right below it. But from the natural, if you continue to move outwards, you kind of have an open area to defend and more expansions, but then they further lead downtown, down to the ground below. And this is really the valley below where you can kind of combat your opponents. So very interesting map. Once again, you have that high ground and low ground feature, but I think it's even more eccentric on this map than it was on Sandshore and Mist. So I'm looking forward to, if you have a macro game, a lot of high ground, low ground mechanics. But you know, as we said before, it's Protoss versus Protoss, so most likely it's going to be a very quick one, and we're probably going to see one base versus one base action.
Yeah, definitely. There is a ramp for defense on this map, so you can have a defender's advantage with sentries and force fields. And how many gateways is that? We got 3 gates and a Robo and a Twilight as well. So
Blink Stalker time.
Tails putting down a lot of production right now.
Wow. Both players are going for a quick 3-gate Blink Stalker.
Interesting.
Yeah.
An earlier Observer and an earlier Robo out of Saladin here. So he's going to get in there just a tad bit before Tails with his Observer, which is a cloaked scouting unit for Protoss that allows you to keep tabs on your opponent and see exactly what they're up to. Both players do get Blink at roughly the exact same time.
Yeah.
So they're going to be getting that upgrade roughly the same time, which just allows their Stalkers to teleport a short distance on a relatively quick cooldown.
Yeah, and you know, both of them going for the same exact build here, and I think the reason why they went for that Observer is so they can essentially eliminate that ramp when they're being offensive. They can blink right past the ridge into the main once they have an Observer on the map, and it looks like Tails just picked off one of the Observers of Saladin. That's a huge loss.
And
He
a
also
Stalker.
loses a Stalker as well. Saladin has lost not only an Observer, but a Stalker. That's over 100 gas worth of resources, and now he's got to fall back. It really, without the Observer, he can't be aggressive.
Yeah, and Tails very intelligently following that up with an expansion immediately. He takes the upper hand in the game,
Right.
You know, takes out that Observer, takes out a Stalker, knows that Saladin is going to have to play on the defensive here,
Yeah.
and then immediately drops that expansion. So now he can just try and keep Saladin pinned in for as long as humanly possible, and then at the last minute, I'm sure he'll pull back to his natural expansion, and then, hey, he'll have an expansion up, Saladin won't. Saladin's going to have to make some sort of an offensive maneuver, and then that's when things get really dicey in a PvP.
Or Protossly possible.
Protostly possible.
Protossly possible.
Now, what's Saladin going to do from here? Is he just going to continue to mass up? Oh, no,
wow,
he's
we
gonna
have a
get
Warp Prism coming out. That's very interesting.
a la White Raw.
Yeah, some special tactics being cooked up right here from Saladin.
What
Now
do
the
you
Warp
think he's
Prism,
going to do with it?
I don't know. Well, the Warp Prism is essentially the Protoss version of a medevac, except it won't heal your units, but it is your ground transport ferry, so to say. But it can also be a mobile pylon. It can warp in units on the ground wherever you want. So,
It's pretty much like the farthest thing from a medevac that you could possibly make.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
It's
no,
a transporter unit.
Yeah, it's the equivalent.
It can also warp in stuff wherever you want it to
Oh,
warp
he's
in.
taking an Immortal and a Sentry.
Well,
I
when you
mean-
think about it, an Immortal, it doesn't make sense to me because an Immortal is much sturdier on the ground against Blink Stalkers than it is inside of Warp Prism. Anything that you have inside your air transport, when it gets picked off, it will die.
Yeah, so putting an Immortal in there is like the most expensive unit you can possibly put in, and Sentries are also a very gas-intensive unit. If he were to lose that, he would be in a lot of trouble. What did he cancel right there?
He actually undeployed the Warp Prism a little bit too quickly, and he lost, I believe, a Sentry. But he is moving in with a pretty large army. He can blink into the main here, and he does exactly that. He drops his Immortal inside as well. Big attack coming in here, and
Oh, wow.
He force fields the ramp, and this is going to give him great access to destroy the entire Protoss infrastructure. But there's a blink. Tails coming for the defense. Will he have enough? That Immortal is just slaying the Stalkers.
Wow, the Sentry positioning there. That one Sentry that Saladin brought in allowed him to get this beautiful arc, and now he's going to be able to pick off quite a few of Tails' units, although Tails pulling up. Oh my god, Tails just accidentally killed his own Immortal right there.
Oh man, that's a horrible loss.
Yeah, a little bit of a miss micro there on his part. Saladin going to blink out, but did quite a bit of damage. How many mining units did he kill right there?
12 workers.
12 workers killed.
But
he's still almost even.
yeah, and not to mention, he's still down a whole base.
Yeah.
Tails did go for a very quick expansion, so I mean, Saladin did damage to get even in the game, but the more he waits, the further behind he falls. And at this point, I think he's not going to expand. He's just going to continue to be aggressive, and he's going to try to end the game with one base aggression against Tails. So, interesting decision making from him. He doesn't want to play economy. He wants to end the game right away, but you know, he's got to make this second wave count. He's got to kill off a Nexus or do critical damage to the Protoss infrastructure.
So this is where we say a player starts to get all in, and I'm sure you've heard that terminology used in a poker sense, where a player is just 100% all in with all their chips, and that's where Saladin is right now.
Yeah.
He's committed 100% to this last-ditch attack. He needs to end the game, and once again, he has great positioning on the ramp, but Tails with a beautiful blink gets better position, and I think Tails is just going to be able to force him off here, and the longer he maintains this expansion, and the longer this game goes, the farther ahead Tails gets, and Saladin now working in some additional zealots here, trying to make that last-ditch push, but I just don't think he has enough to end the game here.
These two Immortals in the back are blasting the Stalkers apart. I mean, they've got 1, 2, 3, 5, 7 kills apiece, or apiece total, and they are really the counter unit to the Stalkers. Saladin can't continue fighting this occasion. He's got to pull back, but really, what has he got to pull back to? If he continues to pull back, he just doesn't have a Nexus to stay in the game, and there's the GG. So, really, Tails with a great defense. And not only did he hold off this front door, but he also held off the natural as well. I'm really impressed, though, with Saladin's attack. I liked the Warp Prism move-in. I liked how he ferried the Sentry in. I wasn't too sure about the Immortal at first, but then it all made sense. The Sentry and Immortal obviously can't blink to the high ground. He wanted to get everything up on the high ground and force field the ramp and destroy the Protoss infrastructure inside out.
Yeah.
The one thing I think that he didn't account for is Saladin, is Tails having blink of his own.